Rajiv Biswas is the Executive Director and Chief Economist for Asia-Pacific at IHS Markit. He joins us now from Singapore. Good to have you on the program, Rajiv. Firstly, how much of a threat is this for China, their declining birth rate? Will it really threaten its economy anytime soon?
China's population has virtually stopped growing, and the data for 2021 shows a very marginal increase in the population. When we look forward over the next 30 years, China's population will gradually start to decline. But what's more of a challenge for China is the aging of the population rather than the actual decline in the population, because the aging population will also result in a declining number of people entering the workforce every year. So it's that shrinking workforce size that has quite significant implications for the long-term potential growth rate of China.
From 1980 and 2015, China, as we know, had a very strict one-child policy. It did unwind that in 2015, but it doesn't seem to have done the trick. Why are Chinese choosing to have fewer children right now?
Of course, the one-child policy is a major factor in terms of why China's population over many decades has been constrained. But as you rightly point out, this policy has been changed since just about 7 years ago. And so what are now the key factors that are driving down the population growth rate are other things, such as the rising cost of rearing a child. As children are becoming more and more highly educated, the cost of sending children to schools, to universities, these are significant costs. Also, as China's become more urbanized, people are, instead of living in larger rural households, they're living in small apartments in cities. And so that's another factor that's constraining the affinity to have large families. So it's a number of these factors. And globally, what we also see is that rising education levels also result in a gradual decline in birth rates. So all of these things have come together and are quite strong factors that are constraining China's birth rate. And that, of course, is what is resulting in this gradual decline in the population of China when we look out over the long-term horizon.
We know wealthier developed countries have long grappled with this situation, with declining birth rates. Governments have tried various things in order to boost birth rates, from offering so-called baby bonuses and other incentives for parents to actually give birth to more children. Do you see China going down that road as well?
It's possible, but I think that, all of these efforts that they've already been doing, I mean, they have made quite substantial policy reforms to try to encourage higher birth rates. But the reality is that households simply, don't want to have so many children anymore for the reasons that I mentioned about education, about the costs of child rearing. And what we see elsewhere in Asia, in countries like Japan and South Korea, is that modern young people have different preferences. They may not want children as much as previous generations. So that is also a cultural factor that is playing into this whole North Asia demographic aging that we're seeing happening. And the consequences are potentially quite severe, not only for China, but even more so for Japan and South Korea, which also are seeing quite dramatic demographic aging.
Okay, Rajiv Biswas from IHS Markit. Really good to get your analysis on that. Thank you for joining us once again.